everybody. I'm Georgeryals. I'm here at Last Chance Archery. It's time for another thing a week. Before I get started, again, improvemyarchery.com. That's where you go to get personal lessons from me. So I do them online or I do them in person. You just go online, look at my schedule, pick out a date and a time that works for you, and then we can have lessons together and we can do a lot of stuff, and I can leapfrog you over a whole bunch of trial and error so that you can get better faster. Also, I do weekend workshops for clubs. So if you just contact me, send me an email, georgeryals@gmail.com. If you're interested in bringing me to your club to do a weekend-long workshop where we go through everything and I give everyone in the workshop individual attention as we go through the whole thing. So send me an email if you're interested in doing that, and we can get a workshop at your club anywhere in the world. Okay, so Peep sights. Every internet archery coach in the world says you must have a solid anchor. You got to get bone-to-bone contact. You got to get like these two knuckles here. I've heard split these fingers and put them over your jawline. I've heard all sorts of things like that. The problem with that tip is when you move the sight up and down the bar, the position of the peep has to change, and I'll explain that a little bit more in a second. The reason that we have that tip, must have a solid anchor, is recurve bows. Recurve bows, since the beginning of time, they don't use a peep sight, so when you draw the bow back and anchor, you have to have a solid anchor and you have to touch your nose to the string, because if your head angle changes, that changes where your sight will hit at the target. So we have a peep sight, and with this peep sight, this controls all the accuracy that you need, and it's entirely dependent on the hole size in your peep. When you're bow hunting, you could use an 1/8 inch peep, and an 1/8 inch peep transmits as much light as your eye could possibly use. So making a peep bigger, like 1/4 inch, 3/8 or whatever, any bigger than an 1/8 of an inch just loses your accuracy at longer distances, and it doesn't give you any more light. So here's how this works. So right now my sight is set on 20 yards. So I've got it set here. So when I draw the bow back and anchor, I'll draw back, put the pin on the target, and then move the peep in front of my eye, and then I stop when the peep is centered on the target. The reason that I center the peep on the target instead of the housing is because if you have multiple pins in your housing, if you use this pin, then this pin, then this pin, then this pin, you're misaligned as you use different pins. You're looking through the bottom of the peep for this pin and the top of the peep for this pin if you're centered on the housing. So that'll compress your marks at the top and the bottom of your distances. So what you do is you put the pin on the target and then center the peep on the pin or the target itself, rather than the housing that the pin is in. So then all of your distances will be linear, your pins will all be equally spaced, and it'll make sense for you. Now, the reason that you can't have one solid anchor on your face is as I move this sight down the bar, when I put this on, say, 100, the viewing angle has to change between me and the peep. So at 20 yards, I'm anchored up here like this. So watch what happens when I pull my bow back. If I just pull my bow back and then close my eyes and just anchor, when I look through the peep, I can't see the scope. So my anchor has to move down a little bit so I can see the scope. So what I do is I put the dot on the target first, then put the peep in front of my eye so the peep can tell me where to anchor. here on my face so I get a good steady shot at all distances. Now, your peep sight height plays a role in your stability. If it's too high, your aim will tend to be loose. If it's too low, things tend to be compressed and your aim is hard. So set your sight to the distance that you'll be competing at. Like if you're shooting indoors, set your peep at 20 yards. If you're shooting USA Archery 50 meters, set your peep for greatest stability at 50 meters. But if you're doing TAC or field archery or something like that, set your peep for the mid-range distance. So for TAC, let's say the mid-range distance, if you're shooting one of their big long courses, you'll want to set your peep at 55, 60 yards so that it's reasonable at 120 and it's also usable at 3 yards, depending on what kind of course you're on. Break the barriers, redding, they'll have you at 3 yards or they'll have you at 100 yards. So setting your pin in the middle of the main distances. So when you look at redding, 75% of the distances are between, say, 40 and 70. That's like 75% of the targets. So you're going to set your peep to be dead on in the middle of that range. So it's a minor trade-off at the close distance and at the longer distance, so you can get your maximum accuracy at all distances. Again, just like working on draw length, if you take the weight, if you just take the weight off of your bars and shoot the bars really light, you can see the uncorrected movement while you're working on this peep sight thing to make sure that you're getting the maximum stability that you can. And then you just put your weight back on and you're ready to go. So if you're wondering, these are Hamskea weights. They're super cool. You take them on and off really easy. Go to Hamskea and buy those. But that's the tip. Getting the peep sight height correct will play a big role in your stability. And put the pin on the target first, then look through the peep. That will tell you where to anchor on your face, and it'll always be right, and it'll be as steady as possible. I'll see you next week for another thing a week.